Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. It is Black Music Month, and I could not think of a better person to talk to than a woman I have known for it's probably most of her career. She is a superstar in the world of entertainment. She is deserving of all accolades that she has received. But let me tell you a bit about her. She is Phylicia Fant, head of music industry and culture collaborations at Amazon Music. I think they even made this title for her. She's that badass. She is the founder of the Purple Agency. She has worked in the entertainment industry for a couple of decades now, and she is known for her connections between artists, brands, and media. With a distinguished career, she has been honored with prestigious awards such as the Culture Creators Innovators Award, Urban Music Executive Award, HBCU Power Award, Bounce Trumpet Awards 2020 Corporate Executive of the Year, ASCAP Women Behind the Music, Ad Color in Music Leadership. She was nominated for that. She's been recognized by many publications, including Variety and Forbes. People understand the impact that she has. And through her role at Amazon Music, she has orchestrated partnerships and events with popular artists like Usher and Andrew Day. Her involvement in organizations like the Recording Academy and the Music Cares Foundation underscore her commitment to the industry and philanthropic initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Phylicia Fant. I love her. You're going to love her too. She's a powerhouse. Join me in welcoming her now. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I am good. And, thinking about this month, it's Black Music Month.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much happening in the world of music that reflects what's going on in our lives. I mean, I really feel like it shows who we are, what we're thinking about as a culture, and how dynamic Black culture really is. You have been instrumental in working with artists, like I said, for decades now, in helping them to find their place as they are bringing their talents to the world stage. How did you get involved in that?
I'm getting involved in shaping the narrative or getting involved in the music industry?
Let's say both.
Okay, well, I think shaping the narrative, and I think even what you're saying about music always being a voice to what's actually happening in our culture is evident from being from Marietta, Georgia, and being adjacent to Atlanta. And I always talk about this because I think it sets the tone of why I started paying more attention, not just to music. I grew up with Marvin Gaye vinyl in my, room and Stevie Wonder because of my father's love of music. But understanding what the words behind what's going on wasn't necessarily as powerful then as it is now, because you see the evolution of songs like that and One Love and Rise Up by Andrew Day become these conversational songs that keep us connected to our ongoing frustrations and pain in the world, right? So I say 1996 because that was the year that Atlanta won the bid for the Olympics. And with money, there's always jobs, but there's also this word, sometimes people call it dirty, gentrification. And so as Atlanta started to boom, which again, you can never say that's a bad thing because Atlanta is the epicenter of culture then and now, I also started hearing records by Outkast and Goody Mob, which talked about what that effect was on Atlanta residents. And so I say those things to say that was my first entry point into the narrative as it directly affected me, adjacently 30 minutes away from the city. And then it also opened my eyes because of Face Records, So Def, all these places within 30 minutes of my radius are booming, and I don't know that they exist. I know music is being made, but I don't know that these labels are actually right there around me. So having then also entered the gates of Spelman College, I'm now living in Atlanta. I'm now in this music scene. I'm going to different places and I see Dallas Austin. I see So Def. I see, Jermaine Dupri. I see all these buildings. I see, what is the group? Goody Mob at the club. I see Andre 3000 and Big Boy at the club. I see them within my atmosphere.
While you're in college.
And I start to recognize that this is really happening. And I'm also developing my network of music industry professionals and not really realizing that's what's happening either, because I'm taking courses with people like DJ Drama and DJ Cannon, who is now, one of the biggest, most prolific DJs, period. But you don't see that you're starting to build your union and your tribe right next to you. So again, it's those moments of finally getting the opportunity to intern under Shaka Zulu and Chris Leva Leva before he was Ludacris. That was my entry point. I knew now that the music business existed. I had always heard of people like Shanti Das and Kwaman Prather and Shakir Stewart, may he rest in peace, because he went to Morehouse College, and all these different connections now that the AUC brought me. Now I'm getting this family. I'm understanding that these people are behind the music. They're working in the music industry, and this is now the place that I want to be. I want to be part of this electrifying movement of, people who are shifting the narrative of how people see music, but also culture. And that was my foray into the business. And I go back to your original question. Once you understand music's power to heal, and also the messages coming out, and then seeing Atlanta being put on the map as a music force, New York and LA kind of own those narratives for so long, but getting this ongoing respect from people like Little John and, people who are constantly on the radio making songs and producers, and people like Polo the Don. And again, all these people getting their chance, Killer Mike being introduced by, Outkast. You're seeing that this is all around you. So between Dallas, Austin, like I said, Jermaine, and now LaFace Records, L.A. Reid, Babyface, we are this city. And I get the opportunity to move to New York. And again, starting as
before you go to New York, I want to talk about the wonder of Atlanta and going to Spelman, and in HBCU, there still are people who say, "Oh, is it good or bad?" What you just described was like this magic moment. You were in the mix in a perfect way, meeting all of these people. If you hadn't been there at that moment, who knows what would have happened for you, right? Talk about the power of an HBCU and the network of people who are there, and then like what happens, because they're everywhere. After you leave school, I feel like those connections remain. I went to Howard, and there are still people everywhere who are part of my ongoing network so many years later.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation I have with people who want mentors and people who want to say, hey, can you help me out? Can you get me a job? And not that you don't want to be there for those people, right? It takes time to actually create mentorship, and that isn't something that you have to kind of earn over time. But what I often say to these students, you're forgetting the importance of networking horizontally. So what that is the ability to network across horizontally and end up creating your tribe of people that are going to help you rise together. So I can look at these various schools around me and think about, again, classes that I took. People know Phylicia Butterfield from Clark. You think about different people within these different schools, right, that are now part of your network. I think of Kennard and Henny, who are, part of the Recording Academy. They were at Morehouse. I go to Clark and I think of also not only Phylicia, but DJ Trauma, right? And like I said earlier, DJ Drama. So we didn't know they had names then. These are just people that you see that are interested in the same thing that you are. You're getting internships around that. Whitney Gail Benta, who was at Spelman with me, who was the first person to create her own kind of music industry major. Like, what is this happening? But you recognize that, okay, these are the people that I've seen on campus kind of doing the same things with me for a long time, right? And so eventually you start to say, these are the people that are now moving to New York, moving to LA, and people wonder how you know each other. And it goes back to this place where you were able to start that relationship. You were starting to see in these people. And I think that's something that people don't understand either, is that if I keep seeing you in the same room over time, eventually I'm going to speak, because I recognize that you're popping up in the same place as me over and over again. And so why is that? And so that common thread of why I think HBCUs are so infectious to true community, authenticity, and understanding who you are as a person are important. But then, like you said, the extended network. You go to Howard, but so does one of my best friends in the industry, Joy Brown, or KJ Rose, who I know from FAMU, who I always say, hey, can you help my artists be that much better by bringing them out? And again, you, who not only went to Howard, but also a member of my same sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, it allows these moments to be forever embedded. And it's a certain comfortability that comes with being able to speak to someone who has the shared experience, because you then know where I'm coming from. You know where my passions lie. And I think
I love this, Phylicia, and that you're saying it, because we hear all the time about white executives, on the golf course, wherever, in these exclusive places that don't necessarily include people who look like us. And what you are describing is, it's kind of, so what? We have our own places. We have our own organizations. We have our own networks. And when we think about it in this way, that we have so much power, so much connectivity, that, okay, we may not have something you have, but that doesn't make us less than. And one of the things that you are known for, and I've watched you do this expertly, is to connect people. I think of you as a visionary in this business. I think I've talked to you and worked with you enough to see these ideas pop out of your head. It's like, what? And then not only do you have the idea, but you figure out who can work with you and what entities can be part of this. Where did that come from? The vision, and then to back it up with the connectivity.
The vision, I always say, started working at Motown Records under Serena Gallagher, and understanding what allyship is. She was a white executive, female, who met me, and I remember this very vividly. She said, "Do you want to avoid being boxed in as a executive of color? If so, I need you to take some risk and not just work artists that look like you." So she placed me with JoJo, Lindsay Lohan, Godsmack. I can, Three Doors Down, I can name the list of artists that I worked that did not look like me, and particularly Amy Winehouse. What that did is it showed me different verticals of how to evolve an artist, right? And it allowed me to be able to take those points of interest and share them back and forth across what I would call this new way of how to break talent from a lens of not just what they look like, but what they're interested in, right? So you start to add the idea of lifestyle, hobbies, passions to your overall campaign. I'm looking at JoJo, who was a musician and 13 years old, but oh my gosh, she's getting a role for RV with Robin Williams. Oh my gosh, she's getting an ad for candies. Hey, do something that org is asking her to be part of a PSA to give back to young adults and be a part of a bigger conversation, a bigger narrative of what it means to be in philanthropy. So that idea.
And Phylicia, also with JoJo, because I had the privilege of working with you, doing media training for JoJo. She was a child.
13.
13 is such an impressionable age. I mean, there's so obviously her mom was there, but the kind of trust that gets put into you to help mold this young lady, to make sure that as you are matching her up in different relationships, that she's going to be safe. Yes. We know the music industry is not necessarily thought of as the safest place.
No.
But with JoJo, I watched you do it, and all the way up to Lil Nas X during COVID, where I remember you being the hand holder, during that period, that with him, this incredible talent, who's also precious. And you were like on the front lines that people didn't even know about in the music industry, to take care of artists so that they can flourish. That's a special quality.
I say it's being empathetic, but it's also understanding humanization. And again, going back to understanding where these artists are from, what they haven't seen. And just because they now have money doesn't mean that they actually understand the access or the responsibility attached to that. And that's really no one's fault. And again, that's not based on how you look. It's just understanding artists get younger and younger each year because of longevity and this thing called the internet, and how young people know how to use the power of the internet. So therefore, those are the people that are being discovered, right? They know how to use TikTok. They know how to promote their song, much like Lil Nas X did. He knew how to be his own self. Knew how to be his own self-marketer. So in knowing how to be your own self-marketer, there became these conversations where they know how to put themselves out there, but they still haven't seen certain parts of the world, right? And it's also environmental. I remember, we court artists and we say, hey, let's go take them to this fancy restaurant, not recognizing maybe that artist has never been to that type of restaurant. So now you're putting this level of uncomfortability in front of them, and you're wondering why they're not connecting, So it really is being willing to go and meet somebody where they are, And I mean that mentally, emotionally, physically, all those things, to understand how to bring out the best in them. So it is a conversation. It is getting past that, as I think people in film say, fourth wall, to really say, like, who are you and what do you want to stand for? So often artists are stagnant, but we go to people even like Kid Cudi, who was like, I'm not the rapper that society is pushing, right? I don't dress this way. I don't wear these pieces of extravagance that, were very much part of hip hop culture that we still love. There's Dapper Dan and different people for reasons. These are parts of hip hop that we love and appreciate and adorn. But what happens when you meet a kid who's from not this part of the country? He's suburban and he wears his jeans differently, and his musical taste infuse Band of Horses and Nirvana. What do you do with that? You have to be able to say, okay, so then what narrative am I creating about you? Especially because as a publicist, you recognize that every magazine is not going to take you. And there's only a couple of magazines that can take you at a given time. So how do I look for other places and other stories, other ways to bring this person to the forefront? If it's not music led, maybe it's fashion led. Maybe, like I said, it's philanthropy led. I think of someone like Lil Nas X, who has evolved into fashion. That wasn't where he first started, but you say, you know what, you're 6'3", you're gorgeous. Like, how do we start to bring out and start to pull the layers back so we can actualize your full potential? So that is what you're looking at in each artist. You're looking at someone, like I said, Kid Cudi, who is charismatic and can act. So how do you open that? And so one night we're at a venue and the founders of the HBO series, How to Make It in America, see him and they're like, we like him. Can he audition? And so these points of connectivity, bringing someone to a football game if they're a fan, or a basketball game, to say, you know what, let me show you what it means to have actual local pride and get behind you. There's different ways to create community and connectivity and developing talent. So you have to think about all those different layers. Is it their local town? Is it their fashion? Is it what they stand for? Andrew was not on the radio with Rise Up, but her song stood for something more. So we went the charity route. Her first performance was
brilliant.
It was not Fallon. It was not, Jimmy Kimmel. It was actually CNN Heroes. We recognized that this was a show that used songs about hope. So if we could get that song in that conversation that recognized hope and dreams and forgiveness of self, and reminding you that you're in the same space as everyone else. There's good days and there's bad days. If we can start connecting that song to those themes, we can break her. And so it's taking yourself out of what you think is the norm and the path that you have to take, and recognizing that if I just get to understand that artist for who they are, it can take me on a different journey. And I won't have to box them out. I think about someone like Polo G when we were at Columbia. I was working alongside Sierra in marketing, and we said he's from Chicago. Who are the artists that are owning Chicago right now? Is it Little Durk? Is it, Kanye, of course, all the different people that recognize that Common, this is Chicago. But it was All-Star Weekend in Chicago. And we're like, we got to get him there for All-Star. We got to attach him to all the things, his lifestyle of basketball, his high school. It's taking over and saying, I'm the new kid from your city. So again, it goes back to what ways can we connect the dots to actualize the best potential for this talent.
Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole, and you're listening to Super Wiz Phylicia Fant. I am just so excited to talk to you, Phylicia. You are a fount of knowledge, and the generosity that you have in telling stories about your career and the people that you work with, I think will inspire so many people. So I thank you so much for just bringing all of you to this moment, because the people who tune into Dreamleapers, my point for them is to listen to these conversations and for it to inspire them to leap into their dreams. Like, you get to see people who are doing it, and that is so incredibly inspiring. And again, we've known each other for a long time, and the thing that you're describing, which I've worked with a lot of people who are publicists and marketing people, you are taught a way to do something. Mm-hmm. And then there's this thing about the culture and about paying attention to who you're working with, that it cannot be cookie cutter. You have to be open enough in a role like yours to see people for who
Mhm.
they are
Mhm.
and to respect them for who they are and then help to uplift them. When has that been a challenge for you?
I can't say it's never not a challenge, and I think part of the job that I have in seeing around corners, in studying something from a very different lens than data, it's hard to translate feeling, expertise, emotion, and being in it as a source of truth, right? So if your only source of truth is data, being able to say, no, I went to that show and I saw how she affected this human being. I saw what all the kids in that venue were wearing. They're not wearing Nike, they're wearing Vans, right? I know that sounds simple, but injecting yourself in a space is how you really start to understand what people want and what they're thinking. And I've always, again, loved the fact of, I think, growing up in a generation of still going to the clubs to discover artists, still going out in the community, still visiting them in their spaces, because you get to see what they look like, what they feel like, what their taste is. And I don't know if I'm making sense when I say that, but that to me is what being part of culture is. It's not a word I just throw out. I think people think it's just a hype word. Culture to me is living, experiencing, and feeling it in a way that I am going to attend as many things as possible. I'm going to get to know the gatekeepers of that particular area and ask them, what do I need to do to show that I am showing up for you in an authentic space? So much of the role where I came to Amazon wasn't just about, hey, how can I put you on the DSP? That's actually not my role. My role is to say, if we are going to connect ourselves closer to culture and really understand the nuances of what we're missing from a data perspective versus cultural perspective, let's go talk to these communities and figure out how to bring them on the platform organically. How do we show up in places and spaces that encourage collaboration, not taking, not taking ownership from someone just to be part of their space. When you're part of a big corporation, it's easy to say, okay, we're here, let's set up shop.
Right.
But if you don't take the time to understand what that particular locale is about, going back to the words like regionalism and what makes that place tick, and I'm going to use Atlanta because it's what I know more than other places, is if you don't know who the music people are, what they're passionate about, the history of the studios, the understanding of what underground Atlanta and skating culture and strip club culture mean to a city. If you don't understand how those things interact with music, you're not going to be successful in that space. So I pride myself on saying, let's get to know the culture. And if I can't answer it, let's find the people who are authentic to that region and highlight them and their experiences, so that as we think about expanding our platform, and garnering new people to understand the power of what Amazon can do, we have to take time to talk to them. So it's in collaboration with a lot of people. We have a policy team that shows up for us as well. We did a thing with Usher where right after.
Yeah, what did you do with Usher? Tell us.
Well, it started early on. We had this women's conference for women of color at Amazon, and they were like, well, what artist would you want to see? And what woman in her right mind doesn't want to see Usher? But in that moment, it became also, what does Usher mean for what he just did with the Super Bowl? He says at the end of the performance, I brought the A to the world, right? And so in that, it's wanting to say, how do we continue to show homage for the fact that he brought A to the world and we care about him as a musician within our space? So in collaboration with the community team, the policy team, and my team, we went to Atlanta, and the Atlanta community honored him with all of his accolades for doing more to bring that city. The mayor came out, like I said, the people from LaFace Records, Ellie Reed, Shanti Das, Kawan Prather, they're all there. But the reason that's important is because you see the cycle of how the community supports. But you also think about policy, who's saying, like, how do we give back to the local HBCU? So between the policy team and Tarita Rogers, who's also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, she's like, let's go to Clark Atlanta. Let's have the marching band, practice songs and parade him. And I do all these touch points to say that we're getting back to the youth. We're showing them that we see you in the community. We're thinking about the next generation of leaders who might work in Amazon Music. We're honoring the fact that musicianship in schools is important, right? So there's more than one conversation in going to Atlanta. It's about Usher. It's about the schools and surrounding HBCUs that support it. It's about recognizing the intentionality of thinking about music programming and how all these things are influential in how music works, you know? It's not just the artists, it's where they're from. And it's also making sure you contribute to that community and give back to it in a way that you see. We want the next generation of musicians and executives to see Amazon as a place that they can come to. So that's the full circle narrative of why we expanded that space and also honored Usher, who is part of that experience.
So, Phylicia, when you put something like that together, this goes back to vision. Well, A, you're paying attention. You and your team are paying attention to what Usher did and said on that Super Bowl stage. And then it's like, boom, a light goes off and you have to act because lots of other people are probably trying to get Usher to do something for them too. But how challenging is it to rally? It's still a corporation, a big corporation, to rally the troops, these different divisions to your vision and to bring people together to make something so layered happen. I mean, that's not an easy thing to make happen.
No, it's challenging and remains challenging. And I think that's the conversation with anything, is how to connect people to a vision and how to slow down to make sure that you are explaining the why. You know, sometimes you know the why, but it's hard to explain the why to other people. So it does take a second to come back and understand. And it's something that you told me as my former media trainer, is how do you bring people to your world, right? And so a lot of times before you can make things happen, you have to start bringing people slowly to your vision and taking time to say, okay, sit with me and come to homecoming, okay? We don't have to sponsor homecoming right away, but could you all just do a little pop-up and see why homecoming is so special, what it means to see this generation of people of color coming together under music and fun and family and camaraderie, and understand what this means to explore it, and then take a wider macro look and see that, it's a reason that 70% of your staff are HBCU grads, right? It doesn't take away anything if you didn't go to one, but what it tries to say is, if you look at the building blocks, this is your future. So if you go to homecoming, you are investing in your future. If you look at HBCUs from that lens of Black audience development, you are investing in your future. And if you want to build trust with this audience, if you invest in them early, show up for them, give them jobs, give them internships and all these moments, they're going to speak highly of you, and therefore they're going to put you as part of their mental model. I always compare it to Comet, cocoa butter, Vicks. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why I buy Comet, but I'm going to always have it. And there is a moment where if I see a tough stain, I'm going to use Comet. But there are certain things in my household, from Noxzema, cocoa butter, and Comet, that are going to be there.
That is so true.
Our trust.
And we are brand loyal.
Brand loyal.
And generational. I mean, it's really because your mama had it.
And it's generational. And generational conversations passed down, just like oral tradition, just like records, just like sampling. Why Isley Brothers and, Uncle Charlie are everywhere, because they continue to pass. They continue to tap into the next generation. It's the same way with products. It's the same way with how I would want to explain the job that I'm doing. If you want to tap in and bring people to you, you have to have this level of loyalty that exists within their spaces. And so that is my thought. If you want to be in someone's household, you have to garner respect and trust.
I love it. This is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are speaking with Phylicia Fant. It is Black Music Month. We are celebrating just the power, the depth, the diversity of Black music. And Phylicia has been on the front lines working with artists and creating opportunities that just maximize the reach of artists, not just Black artists, but we're talking about Black Music Month today. And we're just so honored to have her here. And I have had the privilege of working with many of the artists who Phylicia has worked with over the years at all these different places where she's worked. It's been amazing. I want to talk about Andrew Day for a minute, because you have, something popped up on my social. You know how things pop up. This is a memory. I don't know. It was like 9 years ago or something.
Yes.
You brought her to New York and she was performing. It was like a rooftop, or there was a glass encased space.
Yeah.
And I remember because I watched
somewhere
it
in New York. I remember. I
right.
can't remember who sponsored it or what hotel partner. I would have to ask Lori Feldman, who was head of brands at that time. But that was the moment to showcase her to the world. Yes.
Yes, it was so beautiful. And I had the privilege of working with you and her. She had a vision for herself.
She did.
And her look.
Mm-hmm.
And how she was going to present herself to the world. And I really think that when artists have that presence, that self-possession,
self-awareness and confidence,
yes, that they can go so far. When you see that in an artist, and you saw it in her, and you've worked with her now over the years, what is the relationship like when you've got somebody who already is very self-possessed?
Then my role becomes just to protect them, then, protect their vision and always speak for them where they can't speak for themselves. They're not going to be in every room, but it's now my job to translate artists to non-artist surroundings, right? She wants this type of makeup artist on set. She wants this person who understands her hair texture on set. She's wearing this scarf on her head because she is honoring Lucille Ball and rockabilly culture. Know the difference. Everything is not a stigma. So in understanding that, it's my job to bring as many relatable conversations to the narrative and to those rooms so that they don't box someone in and pigeonhole them into one thought process. If they say, I don't want to dress this way, if they say I don't feel comfortable, that doesn't make them less of an artist. It makes them a better artist, right? And you know that if you're working with people like, I got to work with Prince. There's no telling someone like Prince what to do. You just listen to him. So in those moments, it's like, this is what confidence is. This is what assurance is. This is what longevity looks like. And if you really believe that an artist has the potential to have longevity, then you have to hone in on what they stand for and what you think they're going to represent over generations, not just the now. So in someone like Andra, you knew immediately she was going to be someone who was generational, right? That she was not just for the now. So protecting her IP, protecting her voice, protecting, everything that she stands for becomes my secondary job, right? To her. I'm her publicist, but I speak on her behalf. What do you want me to say? What do you mean by this? So it's going deeper and understanding. It is my job to translate. So I have to do all I can to take the extra time to listen.
Listening is everything. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk about Prince for a minute because both of us had a chance to work with him, which was just, for me, it was one of the most unbelievable experiences ever, in particular, because he was the greatest visionary I've ever met. He could see like years ahead, like it was in front of your face right now. Mm-hmm. And, you don't see this, Harriette? And I was like, well, I'm trying to see it. Mm-hmm. Tell it to me another way. Right. I wonder, because you worked with him as a young professional in this business, what impact did he have on your vision?
It's really being meticulous, right? And maybe the word is perfectionism, maybe that's good or bad. I don't know if that's a healthy thing, right? I think sometimes we get probably too wrapped into how can we be perfect, even as leaders, not being able to take the criticism that actually can make you better. But what I see is what it means to have commitment to task, what it means to understand culture, because there's never a time where Prince didn't lift somebody up. Whether it was artists that he could see and discover like Leanne LaHavis, whether it was honoring who was behind him, this array of people, whether it was anyone's conversation with him. I remember Dallas Austin one time talking to me about how Prince is like, be careful when you're climbing that ladder, right? Because if you fall off, it hurts if you don't constantly go back down and pick up other people, right? There's going to be a time where you potentially fall off. But if you fall off and people can catch you, it becomes because you have went up and down the ladder. And so Dallas having that conversation with me, if I go down the list of people who have been affected by him and don't recognize it when they're having conversation, it's that example of his ability to warn you, and kind of tell you, like, this is why publishing matters. And if you see the trend of publishing now, everyone was in arms. This man is walking around with a symbol, but I was working with Cameron Strang at the time, and he gave him back his publishing. That was his goal at being at Warner. And I think maybe because he came from the publishing arm before becoming our chairman, that was what we did. So being a part of that part of Prince's journey, the part where I was part of 3121 under Serena, but then now being a part of his freedom, right? And I use the word freedom because, to get to your answer, it's, if an artist really wants freedom, it comes with understanding your true value, right? And real artists want the freedom to express themselves musically. The way they dress is all tied to freedom. And I remember having a conversation even recently with Andre 3000 before he came to play his Flute album to Amazon. And the word he kept using was freedom. So freedom is evolution. Freedom is the ability to grow. Freedom is the ability to push boundaries. And so when I think about Prince, he represented what it would be like if you were free to continue to push boundaries, push fashion, push legacy, but also do it your way. And I don't think any artist comes into this game not wanting to eventually have full freedom in their creativity.
I love that. And so as a publicist, as a marketing person, as a person with your role, which is now self-defined, which I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
But you are
it's
someone.
Freedom. Just kidding. Yeah.
Okay. It is freedom. And you help to lift these people up so that they can reach their full potential.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep yourself open so that whatever your upbringing is, whatever your values are, while of course they support you, you remain open to see them for who they are and not judge them?
I think it's that whole thing, not judging them, because I don't know what they've gone through. I think recently, even with one of my own personal journeys, I think I got offended by someone who I thought would be my ally in a conversation, because we share a lot of similarities from being women of color, things like that. And then I had to take a step back and say, but what is their motivation, right? It doesn't mean that they're out to quote unquote get me, but their motivation could be different from my own. So I think it's important to understand someone's motivation, understand their background, understand that they may be going through something that you are not meant to see or understand. And that also happens with constantly looking at a lens of what music is coming out, what fashion conversations are going on, who feels like they're not getting a voice, what charitable organizations are being started. Like if you look at the 15% pledge, what that meant for fashion. If you think about, motherhood and now Elaine's charity that's happening,
The
what you
birth
keep
fund,
seeing is what's popping up, right? So if you constantly look at what's popping up and why, then it helps you stay connected to conversations that are sometimes not part of your everyday narrative. It allows you to add those narratives. So now if I'm thinking about a female artist, not that I wouldn't be thinking about this, but I'm thinking about, oh, well, do you want to be a mother? Are you about to be a mother? Because that could be affecting their journey. I remember Cardi B being pregnant and how it shocked everyone. Is she really going to do this coming off of her #1 song? But it opens up the conversation. Are we including motherhood in our conversation? Are we including people who are connected to fashion? You look at someone like Rihanna, you look, like I said, at the 15% pledge, you look at Pierre Moss and things that, again, are symbiotic, because all these things cross over. Culture is fashion, it's music, it's food, it's culinary, it's everything, right? But when you see things pop up, when you see conversations, you have to be able to grab those conversations, because they're going to affect your business. They're going to affect your marketing. They're going to affect strategically how you start to move and shape the next generation, right? So I'm paying attention to, are there enough represented people of color at the Met Gala, you know? And then you see the Wiz come up and you see the whole cast be invited, because it tells you that these spaces matter. And they recognize that you have to include these people in these spaces. Does that make sense? But
absolutely,
that's the best answer I have for what I study all the time. Is I'm looking for the new conversation. I'm looking for the new narratives and culture. I'm looking at the why. I'm going to the WNBA game and I'm saying, okay, we get the conversation, but look at Urban Decay being a sponsor, you know, thinking about this league now as fashionable and beautiful, you know. I don't know if that word was always used in the past. Of course, there's beautiful people.
You know, it wasn't.
But it wasn't. You know, you look at Lisa Leslie. She's gorgeous. She's tall. She's statuesque, right? But these conversations are coming. So it says there is a place here. There's a new way to look at the NBA. They care about their fashion. You see Angela Reese walking and saying, these heels are getting my feet, but I'm going to wear them. So it's different, you know? And so it causes me to include those things in my conversation, in my narrative, in my marketing. How do I start to integrate and continue to overlap these things which truly break artists, right? You don't break artists from just a song, you break them from the community. And so I look at it as, how do I build the village that's naturally, I guess, in lockstep with that artist so I can produce the best outcome.
Now, Phylicia, thinking of younger people who are entering this industry now, and you just described paying attention to everything that's going on. I talk to a lot of people who now just they get their news from TikTok. Mm-hmm. They get, where do you think people should be getting their news? How many sources and what sources are you combing on a regular basis in order to have a full menu of content like you just described? And this is a trend and this is what's going on. You have to look at a lot of different things. What do you recommend that people should be looking at?
I think you have to go where you're comfortable. You know, I grew up where I had to look at every paper every morning. So I had to look at USA Today. I had to look at Wall Street Journal. I had to look at, you know, the publications vibe. Like I had to skim everything. So It's kind of the same conversation. Are you skimming art publications? Are you skimming, you know, fashion publications? Are you skimming political conversations? Because again, these are all part of the conversation, right? People are going to go to the White House to perform, or they're not going to go to the White House to perform. What's the reason why? You won't know unless you were part of all those conversations. You have to look at the political years. You have to look at the journeys. You have to look at the conversations. You have to see who's supporting what. So to me, it's a skim of what makes me the best at what I do, and how I expand what I do. And I am not my best self if I don't take the opportunity to have myself in all those conversations in all those rooms. So it's what I'm reading, but it's also what I'm attending. Does that make sense?
It does.
I can't grow in the same rooms, so I have to push myself in other rooms, and it's not always easy. It's organizations that you join, it's organizations you're invited to. There's a reason I'm on various boards, because you care, but because you hear about different issues. We recognize our music cares. We're not giving enough back to people of color. Okay, you got to talk about it, and you got to be in the room. And luckily, we have a great executive.
Great to talk about this, don't you, Phylicia? Because a few years ago, everybody was talking about it. Sadly, because George Floyd was murdered, and we were all at home, and we got to see that on loop. That did not last very long.
Did not last very long.
A whole lot of money went in, and then the box was checked, and we're done with that. And you're still here saying, wait a minute. We need to take care of people. We need to see them, know that they exist. How difficult is it to continue to have that conversation when lots of people aren't interested in hearing it?
It remains difficult, but again, you have to decide what your legacy and your purpose is, right? I show up Black in every space I come in. There's no denying that. I don't have a lighter complexion. I wear my hair different every time. Like I am this person all the time. And this person is not always the easiest person to bring into your psyche, right? Or try to understand. But when you really talk about standing on the shoulders of people, you know, I remember the first Black manager I saw that was female, which was Sharon Hayward. You know what I'm saying? I remember the first day I met you and I'm like, wow, she's tall, she's gorgeous. She has a column in the Daily News. Like, who is this person? So I have a mom and dad who I honor very much, in that they gave me opportunities because I know what they came from. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's really the only way to keep your moral compass, right? Because it's hard. It's easy to go off the rails. This is a lot, you get tired of fighting, but I have to change the word from fighting to responsibility. Okay. So, and that's everyone's decision. You can't make someone do something. You can't make someone do their research. You can't make someone younger than you respect you. You can't force them to understand the opportunity that you're giving them by bringing you to a space. If they want to know the history or not, they may say, hey, I'm here now. I don't care what you had to go through. That's on them, and I hope that they don't have that moment where they have to go head to head with diversity, or head to head with, being able to not be removed from a space that you started. It's ongoing, but I feel better knowing that at least I tried it, as opposed to walking completely away from it. And again, that's my own personal choice, which I told you earlier. Like, people's motivation is for different reasons. So sure. I can't get mad at their motivation for not doing something that I think you should be doing. And so all I can do is say that what makes me my best self is thinking this way. And what makes me my best self for the artist, friend, executive that I am partnering with, whether it's through friendship, whether it's through life, whether it's through business, is that this is how I'm going to approach it. And I really believe in the village mentality. I would not be able to break artists without a village. I go back to someone when I was working with Daniel Caesar. If it's not for Caroline Yim, who is his agent, Majima, who is at Spotify, Marquetta at the time, who was at Revolt. I'm going with my female village. Of course, there's men too that have helped me. But in that moment of sisterhood and us saying, hey, let's get behind this artist, right? We believe in this. We support the team. You don't get there unless you have a village of people around you, horizontally, sometimes vertically, but likely horizontally, that say, let's go do this together. Let's do this in partnership, right? So I don't want to let them down because they haven't let me down. And so that's how I look at culture. Culture has not let me down. Culture is why I'm on this phone call with you. Culture is why I have a roof over my head. Culture is why I can get in certain rooms, because people trust that I am going to protect it. And so I like that that's the legacy or the rumor behind my name.
I love that. It is Black Music Month. We have watched many Black artists break through in every possible way. We look how we are and we do everything, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that we don't do. How do you look at, assess Black music, Black artists today? You've been in this game for a long time. Where do you think we are? What do you think our value is to global culture?
I think our value is in the billions. I think our respect is still not there. And, I was privileged to sit on a panel with Diana Williams last week, the founder of Black Music Month, co-founder. And if her story is the same as my story, we have a problem, right? If we are still fighting for equity, if we're still fighting for, the value of our IP, if we're still fighting for our place, that means there's work. I know I have a business partner who we started this thing called Mom's Honors, coming out of our work with Black women in the industry, and the documentary I did with Shaquita Lockley, Eggs Over Easy, Black Female Fertility, right? Black women in fertility. And we just lost the right to have Black female businesses funded, So again, this correlation is continuous. This cycle of the commodification of this music, but us not experiencing the wealth from this music, the access. There's still space, and you never want to sound downtrodden, because I don't think that's the answer either. And I don't want to say that there's not plenty of allies in the space who are doing their part to try to create these balanced spaces, but I don't know how we get to balance. I think, again, it's the continuous conversation of ownership. It's the conversation of equity. It's the conversation of who's actually at the table. And I feel like it's a constant flip. We're here, then we're not here. We're here, then we're not here. Until we are a permanent fixture, we have a long way to go, and that would unfortunately be my only answer. Okay.
Understood. My last question: how do you keep your energy up high? You seem to have boundless energy. You are always on point. How do you take care of yourself?
I'm glad you asked that question. I was probably at my highest weight about 3 years ago. And it's probably a combination of stress. It's a combination of just don't feel like it. And then I remember the end of COVID and saying, I am not my best self right now. And part of me being my best self has always been able to express myself through my Phylicia hair, Phylicia outfit, Phylicia color, right?
Ah,
I remember the day I told when Serena hired me, I'm like, I'm throwing all my suits away because I've never been this like gray suit, black suit, pantyhose. Like I knew the day that was no longer me when I had this internship at UPS corporate NPR. I was like, oh, can't do this. So when I recognized I could no longer express myself the way I wanted to, and I kept hiding behind black, right? Black clothing. I recognized it was no longer because I was in New York and I was trying to be chic. I did it because I was no longer communicating who I wanted to communicate to the world. And my mom said to me, she said, I haven't seen you in your braids in a long time. And I think that was her way of challenging me. And I said, I don't know. I just don't know if that's corporate enough. She said, but I never really raised you to be corporate. You know, your dad owned a clothing store. So, you know, he was a model. Why would you all of a sudden not do that? And that sentence said, okay, let me start the process of finding Phylicia's best self again. And I got a trainer, and I see her probably 3 days a week to this day, Adrienne Hopkins. So thank you for everything she's doing for me. To say it's time to reclaim my authentic self. It's time to remember why I went to Spelman College. It's time to understand that Blackness is not a monolith, and I represent a part of that spectrum that deserves a voice and deserves to be seen. And so now self-care is mandatory. Taking days off my schedule are mandatory. Not talking past a certain time, mandatory. You know, recognizing that there is the pursuit of love and happiness, but once it's no longer serving you, you have to let it go. And that took honoring myself again, journaling again, and again, just being still for a second and saying, this is the time I redirect all energy on Phylicia. And so that's it.
Oh, well, you are radiant. You are beautiful. It shows all that you are doing for yourself. I mean, the happiness is pulsing through. So thank you for sharing your story with us. I love you. So proud of you. And can't wait to see what comes next, Phylicia.
And I love you, and I am so proud of you, and I honor you for constantly being an empath to so many of us, and seeing us for who we are, and allowing us to be, I would say, our most unhappy selves, and reminding us why we should be happy. And I think there's no one in this industry who has not come into your contact and recognize that gift that you have to calm people, bring out the best in them, and also be able to comfort them at their worst to get to their best is a skill set. And thank you for allowing me to see my dream. All right. So I love you.
You're living it, my girl. Thank you too. All right. Take care. Bye. I told you this was going to be great. Phylicia Fant is a force of nature. I love her. I know you do too after that. Follow her. She's running that division at Amazon that she created. I mean, vision. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.